in May to declare a national housing emergency.
Oh, wow. Is there a timeline for that, or is it this fall?
See, that's exactly why I don't do radio remotes. You know, where you go broadcast from the local auto dealership or something like that. Do you hear how terrible that audio is? Go to a studio so I don't have to hear everybody in the background. Anyway, I wonder what's going on with the housing emergency, this stuff. Joining me now, Carol Roth, 2 times New York Times best-selling author, former investment banker. Carol, okay, first of all, do we have a housing emergency? What is it if we do?
Well, it depends on your definition of emergency, Jesse. And obviously, we've had a lot of national emergencies that have been declared, which aren't emergencies. So, in our non-emergency emergencies, I would say housing probably ranks near the top because there is at least an affordability crisis. And we certainly, could use some more housing. So I think it's a good thing to focus on. In terms of what it is that the government can do at the federal level to make housing more affordable, that's sort of a big question. I mean, some of the things are tangential. They could make colleges more affordable by getting the government out of college funding, which would then not burden young people with debt and give them more money to be able to compete in the market. They could try to do things to clear out some of the red tape and any of the regulatory costs at the national level. They could make more mortgages assumable. Right now, about 80% of mortgages are not assumable, and that would make it certainly, more less expensive, as I should say, to get into the market and create more movement in terms of the supply side for people who, are worried about being stuck and not being able to get a better mortgage if they move properties. But some of the issues really are at the federal and local level. I mean, property taxes and insurance tend to outweigh the cost of mortgages in many locales. And so even if you can afford getting into the house, you may not be able to afford the carrying cost. So certainly a lot of work to be done here, whether you want to call it an emergency or just a very important thing to focus on.
All right, Carol, so walk me through this. These presidents all declare things to be emergencies so they can assume powers they wouldn't otherwise have. Not a big fan, but we'll set that aside for the moment. What does declaring a housing emergency give them the authority to do that they don't already have the authority to do?
I think that's an excellent question. I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV. This administration, as with other administrations, don't seem to be burdened by what it is that they can or cannot do legally. So I think that, they're going to try their hand in any of those things that I talked about. And probably some of those they have the constitutional authority to do. And some of them, somebody may push back on. But I do think that working with Congress to try to create a scenario where we have more housing, where it's more affordable without the government getting, entrenched in building housing or something ridiculous like that. But things that remove the barriers certainly make sense here. And, I'm sure some of the ideas will be really great and others will probably be pulling our hair out.
Okay. Please, God, don't let the government start building houses. Carol, a lot has been made about people, especially young people, not being able to afford a house now the way we used to be able to when we were younger, and I understand all that. How much do these large corporations like BlackRock buying up residential homes en masse, how much does that come into play, and is there something we can or should do about that?
So, in my book, You Will Own Nothing, this is something that I floated. We did not have institutional ownership in the housing market, 12 or 13 years ago. And now it has become a very big part of new housing purchases, something between 20 or 25% of new housing purchases. It doesn't mean that these institutions own 20 to 25% of the full market, because obviously, you get you don't have turnover of every house every year. And of that 20 and 25%, some of them may be corporate entities that are smaller mom and pops. One thing I do want to set the record straight on, which I think is really important as we talk about this, because we don't want to have corporations, coming in and renting you back the American dream. And I think that it doesn't fall as much on the government as it falls on individuals to not sell your house to a big corporation. But we have to learn the difference between BlackRock and Blackstone. So Blackstone is a private equity firm that makes direct investments in companies. That is the firm that goes in and buys up housing. Okay. BlackRock is an asset manager. They have lots of assets under management because you go and you invest in one of their ETFs, and then that's counted under, their assets under management. But they may have, through your investment in their ETF structure, some indirect ownership in some of these companies that go out and purchase houses and rent them back to people, but they are not doing the direct buying. And I think a lot of people get confused between the two because they sound the same. They used to be related at one point in time, but Blackstone is the one that's buying up the houses, and BlackRock has all of your assets under management. So we'll continue to hammer this home. And if nothing else, you learned that today.
Blackstone also makes those wonderful flat top grills. I'm sure it's a totally separate company that I'm making up right now, but I have one of these Blackstones, and it's the best thing to make breakfast on, Carol. You could put eggs and bacon and pancakes all on one thing. You should see me on the Blackstone.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's good stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good stuff.
I love it
yeah,
so much.
Let's not sully their name. That is the good Blackstone. They are not going out and purchasing their house. They are making your home more delicious, which is different than the private equity fund Blackstone. So just so that we don't get in trouble.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. It even makes it easy to toast the burger buns because you put them. Anyway, let's stay focused. Scott Bessent said there may be a rate cut. Here he was.
I believe that we're getting the signals from Chair Powell, from market pricing, that we are going to get a rate cut in September. I think we've seen from Governor Waller, he believes that could be a series of rate cuts. We've seen that from Governor Bowman. It looks like they are adopting a more dovish tone here. So it looks like we could start moving. We are in a highly restrictive monetary posture right now. It looks like we could start moving away from that.
Okay, so I'm assuming that means they think inflation's under control.
Well, first of all, I think that sitting at that diner, he was wishing that he had breakfast on a Blackstone, but he didn't. And so now we have to talk about rate cuts instead. Right. Inflation is not under control, based on the most recent data. If we accept that data as correct, which we all know is undercounting inflation, it's still 50% higher than their target of 2%, and 2% is still eating up your money every year. So I don't know that they feel like that inflation is under control. I think that the reality of the situation is that Fed policy is probably not going to influence inflation at these levels. Inflation will be influenced by a whole host of other things, including the crazy deficits that we continue to run in our national debt, but not necessarily by a 25 basis point policy cut. The crazy thing, Jesse, is that you're hearing, oh, we're going to get cuts. You heard it from Powell basically, and Jackson Hole said that's what he was thinking was going to happen. You're hearing it from Bessent. You're hearing it from some of these Fed governors. But if you look at what the market is doing as we're having this conversation, the rates, the yields on the long-term treasuries, the 10-year and the 30-year, what are they doing in response to a potential rate cut? They are going in the opposite direction. So that does mean that the market believes that there are going to be inflationary pressures and other things coming down the pike. Otherwise, you would see it moving in lockstep with what the expected outcome is going to have. So while the Fed can influence short-term rates, those longer-term rates, which impact longer-term financing for the U.S. government, that is set by the market. And the market is saying, yeah, we don't believe so. And by the way, gold's saying the same thing too, on the tear again today.
All right, Carol, before I let you go real quick, are tariffs helping pay down the national debt? I keep seeing this claim.
Well, in so much as that a tariff is a tax and that they have collected more in taxes from US taxpayers, from corporations, they can put that money towards reducing the deficit. It's certainly not paying down the debt because we still are running a massive, close to $2 trillion deficit. So until that deficit goes to zero, we're still racking up additional dollars of debt because that's the only way that we finance our deficits. So the challenge comes that because this money is primarily coming out of consumers and businesses' pockets, that eventually that's less money for the consumers to be able to spend on other things in the economy. Same thing with corporations. It creates an impact on the taxes that they're going to pay elsewhere. So the question is, do we get any sort of a bump or over, when we look at this over a period of a year or a year and a half, does it actually create a drag on the amount of revenue that they're otherwise able to collect? And net, we either come out in the same position or a worse position because it's just taxes moving from one pocket to another pocket, not really creating a new source of growth, which is driving, incremental revenue, so to speak.
Thank you, Carol. Come back. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.